Yeah, well, it's been about 3 years since we found Teena, and I guess we've been a bit of a victim of our own success because about the same time we found Fisher East nickel deposits, and so we've had a competition between these two projects, and we've felt that the market has really not given us great value for the Teena discovery and our interest in that project. It tends to be more focused on our nickel project, and pretty much our share price has been following the nickel price. So we feel that we need to free up the value of this zinc project for the benefit of our shareholders. And so this particular offer, if you like, is a spin-out type deal where we will take control of another company, we'll vend the project into it. The benefits for our shareholders obviously are that we'll get some cash out of the deal. We'll have the project in a new vehicle that can have a value of its own in the market. It can add to that project by adding other projects, which will give it a life of its own. We see also that there's a strong interest in zinc at the moment, so we see the zinc market improving. So we think investor sentiment in zinc projects is going to be very strong, and having this project out in its own vehicle is going to create the best value for our shareholders. Yeah, well, obviously it's difficult to value a project when it's at a relatively early stage like this one. We've just put out the resource on it. There's a range of variables that are completely unknown for a project like this that could be a 20 or 30 year project. What's going to happen to the zinc price? Where will capital and operating costs end up? So it's very difficult to put your finger on what the project will be worth in, say, 20 years' time. But we've spoken to people around the industry, and we've looked at various other projects and benchmarked it and so forth. We feel that the roughly $15 million offer that we've accepted for this project, or we have received for this project, is pretty fair in the current market. Now, even though we currently hold 49% of the project, we're going to be very shortly diluted down to 30% as Teck complete their earn-in. So really we're talking about 30% interest in the project. So 15 million for a 30% interest basically gives you a value of about 50 million for the total project, and we think that's pretty fair at the current time. The deal is essentially a simple deal actually. Basically we'll be paid cash and issued shares for our interest in the project. Now, the cash obviously is fairly simple to deal with. The shares that we'll receive from IMI will give us a majority shareholding in IMI. Now, there's a few steps that will have to be taken through to meet the ASX listing rules and guidelines. IMI is going to have a shareholder meeting to approve the transaction. Then they're going to have to undertake a capital raising to raise the money to be able to pay us, and also to have some working capital for going forward with the company and running this project. But it's a relatively simple process. It's well understood, and really it's no more complex than doing an IPO. Well, there aren't particularly regulatory impediments, but there are some process steps that will need to be taken. On the Rox side, there aren't any problems. We are able to proceed with this deal. But from the IMI side, they'll have to go through a number of steps with the ASX. We've consulted extensively with the ASX on this. We understand all of the requirements, and we're confident that we can meet them. As I mentioned earlier, there will need to be a shareholder meeting for IMI shareholders to approve the transaction. They'll need to do a capital raising, which will involve a prospectus, and then they'll have to be relisted to the ASX. But we understand all those processes, and we're confident that IMI can meet all those things. Well, that's certainly something that we wanted to do. We wanted to extract some value from the project, but we certainly wanted to maintain an interest in the project going forward. We're a great believer in this project. We're a great believer in zinc, and this deal with a big shareholding in the company that's going to take this project forward gives us the benefit of the upside that will come from the project, will come from zinc price appreciations and so forth. And it also is a great asset for Rox shareholders because they will be sharing in the success of the new company as well. Well, obviously for Rox shareholders that will still be a good outcome because we will still receive $2 million cash, and instead of $12.8 million worth of shares in IMI, we'll get $12.8 million worth of shares in Teck. Now, Teck is a major international company, so having a significant shareholding in a company like Teck would be a significant asset for the company and therefore for our shareholders. But we have agreed with IMI that the Teck have this preemptive right. We've agreed that there'll be a break fee should Teck exercise their preemptive right of $300,000 payable to IMI, which basically compensates them for all of the work and effort that they've put into this process so far. Well, suspended shells like IMI are aplenty on the ASX, and they're commonly used for what's called backdoor listings, and that's a common way of moving projects around and reinvigorating companies. So it's not an uncommon thing to happen. The ASX has been clamping down on backdoor listings, but if you comply with the rules, which we believe we can, there shouldn't be any problem. Now, IMI is going to have to make a share consolidation before it can then raise some capital to complete the transaction and also to have working capital going forward. And the plan is that IMI will raise between $8 and $12 million, which will be more than enough for that company to go forward, and we're very happy with that. Well, the market support is strong and the support of our major shareholders is strong as well. There's a very strong interest in zinc projects going forward, especially with the predictions of the zinc price appreciating over the next few years. And Teena is a very significant deposit. It's the 7th largest high-grade zinc deposit in Australia, and it's potentially the 11th largest zinc deposit in the world. So it's a significant deposit. Now, we're going to be able to offer participation in the new company going forward to our shareholders through a priority pool that will happen in the IMI capital raising. And so Rox shareholders can be exposed in two ways, therefore. They can be direct shareholders of IMI, but they'll also be exposed through their existing shareholding in Rox, which will own a significant portion of the new company. Well, first of all, we've secured a priority pool for Rox shareholders in the IMI capital raising. So they'll be able to get a benefit by having a direct shareholding in IMI. Secondly, Rox shareholders, if they remain as Rox shareholders, will get a value of IMI in the Rox share price, which we expect should increase as well. And we expect the IMI share price to increase because the zinc price is under pressure to go up. There's predicted deficits in zinc production coming forward. A number of significant zinc mines have closed lately. Something like 15% of the zinc supply has gone out of the market in the last 6 to 12 months, and there's no real prospect of that being replaced in the short term. So there's going to be significant supply-demand pressure on the zinc price to force it upwards, and that's going to be reflected in the value of IMI. Rox will be a significant shareholder in IMI, and it's usual for major shareholders to have directors on the board to look after their interest. I also think that I can add value to IMI, due to my broad experience in the mining industry over the last 30 to 35 years. We see that IMI, though, will have a life of its own. It will have a new managing director that will take the company forward to become a significant zinc and lead exploration company in Australia. And we think that from that perspective, Rox shareholders are going to benefit greatly from the success of IMI. Well, there are no set rights under the terms of the transaction. There'll be a priority pool for all Rox shareholders to put their hand up to say, I would like to subscribe for shares in the new company. And certainly I'll be subscribing for as many shares as I can afford. Yeah, we certainly will be looking for projects to add to the portfolio. It always makes sense to spread your risk, even though we think Fisher East Nickel and Mount Fisher Gold are very good projects. Just recently, we did a JV deal with Backdoor Minerals on the Mount Fisher Gold project, just to spread the risk. And we'll look for new projects that can add to our portfolio and add value to Rox. We're going to be well funded for this going forward. That's one of the purposes of doing this spin-out deal. We'll get some cash from the deal, plus some options that we'll be issuing as part of the capital raising will enable us to fund any new project acquisitions going forward. Well, there are two ways that we can add value to Fisher East. The first one is we can continue to explore and expand the resource base and have associated development studies, feasibility studies carried out. But also another option would be to bring in a partner to help us fund all of that and to help us perhaps add some expertise in some areas that we don't have. And we're certainly exploring both options. But certainly once we get some funding out of this zinc spin-out deal, we intend to go back to Fisher East and recommence exploration and recommence some resource drilling. We've seen some signs just recently that there could be a recovery in the nickel price starting to happen. There are now predictions that the nickel supply and demand will go into balance in the next year or two. And partly this is because of the restrictions in supply of direct shipping nickel ore that's coming out of Indonesia and now out of the Philippines. And we can see that that's starting to have an impact on the nickel price. Just in the last couple of weeks, we've seen the nickel price go up 6%, for example. One thing we do know about the nickel price is that it's highly volatile because the nickel market is a relatively small market. So the nickel price tends to go up and down quite rapidly. And we certainly want to be ready for the next nickel price spike. And so developing and working on a project at times of low prices can be quite a smart strategy. Well, we see the deal as a very good one. First of all, we're going to get cash, so we're not going to be diluting shareholders by further equity raisings. Secondly, Rox is going to end up as a major shareholder in this new company that's going to hold some major zinc assets. So the valuation of that company, we think, will be much more transparent and fair in the current market, and that's going to be an advantage to Rox shareholders as well. We also see that the value of Rox's share holding in IMI, the new zinc company, can potentially increase with the zinc price upsurge that we expect to happen over the next couple of years. So that'll be good for Rox shareholders as well. Also, Rox won't have to fund contributions to the JV because that will now be funded out of IMI. And finally, there's the opportunity for Rox shareholders to participate in the new zinc company directly, which we think is going to be fairly and transparently valued in the market. And we see it as a great opportunity to build a new significant zinc company in the Australian scene.